You
Madame
spilled the
Bose
water
slammed the
again.
metal gate
Are
so
you
hard it
completely
echoed through the entire
incompetent?
compound.
I am so
"You
sorry,
will not
madam.
fetch water
It was
here
an
again,"
accident.
she shouted, yanking the bucket from Ada's hands and spilling it across the dusty ground. Ada froze. The other tenants watched from a distance, but no one dared to speak. Because everyone knew one thing. Madame Bose always got away with everything. But not for long. If you love intense stories like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment, because this story, it only gets worse. The compound sat quietly in a crowded part of town, the kind where neighbors should have been like family. But not here. Not with Madame Bose. She had lived there the longest, and somehow she acted like she owned not just her apartment, but everyone's lives. She monitored everything. Who came in? Who left? Who laughed too loud? Who used too much water? And if she didn't like you, she made your life unbearable. At first, people tried to ignore her. Then they tried to reason with her. Eventually, they simply avoided her. Except Ada couldn't. Ada was different. Quiet, respectful, hardworking. She lived with her sick mother in a small one-room apartment at the back of the compound. Every day she left early, came back late, and minded her business. She didn't argue. She didn't complain. She didn't cause trouble. Which made her the perfect target. Madame Bose noticed her silence and mistook it for weakness. And from that moment, Ada became her favorite victim. It started small. Little things that others could ignore, but Ada couldn't. One morning, Ada woke up to find her clothes missing from the drying line. She searched everywhere until she saw them. Dumped in the mud behind the compound. Soaked, dirty, ruined. Madame Bose stood nearby, arms folded. "You think you can hang clothes where you like," she snapped. "This is not your father's house." Ada opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. She quietly picked up her clothes and went back inside. No argument. No fight. And that was exactly what Madame Bose wanted. Days later it got worse. Ada returned from work one evening, exhausted, only to find her slippers missing. Then her bucket. Then her food container. At first she thought it was coincidence. Until she saw Madame Bose using her bucket the next morning. Ada hesitated before approaching her. "Ma, that bucket." Madame Bose didn't even let her finish. "If you accuse me of stealing, you will regret it." Ada stepped back immediately. Her heart pounded, but she said nothing. Because deep down she was afraid. Water was life in the compound. There was only one functioning tap, and everyone had to manage carefully. But Madame Bose, she controlled it like it belonged to her. Some days she locked it. Other days she chased people away. And Ada always waited her turn. Until that morning. Ada had barely slept the night before. Her mother had been coughing non-stop and she needed water urgently. So she woke up earlier than usual and went to the tap before anyone else. She had just filled half her bucket when... "Who told you to fetch now?" Ada turned. Madame Bose was marching toward her, fury in her eyes. I came early, Ma," Ada said softly. Before she could react, Madame Bose grabbed the bucket and poured everything out. Water splashed everywhere. "Wasted. You people have no respect," she yelled. "You think you can outsmart me." Ada stood there, stunned. "But my mother is sick," she whispered. Madame Bose laughed. "That is not my problem." By now, everyone had gathered. They watched. They murmured. But no one stepped forward. Because they had seen this before. Anyone who challenged Madame Bose ended up regretting it. Some had been falsely accused. Others had been reported to the landlord. One man had even been forced to leave. So they stayed quiet. And Ada. She bent down, picked up her empty bucket, and walked away. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of everyone. That night, Ada sat beside her mother, fanning her gently. The room was hot. The air was heavy. And the silence was painful. "Did you get water?" her mother asked weakly. Ada hesitated, then nodded. But it was a lie. There was no water, no food, and barely any hope. For the first time in a long while, Ada felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not yet, but something close. Something that whispered, "This cannot continue." The next morning, things reached another level. Ada stepped outside to sweep the small space in front of her room. Suddenly, a bucket of dirty water poured from above. Splash! It soaked her completely. Her clothes, her hair, everything. She looked up slowly. Madame Bose stood on the balcony, holding the empty bucket. "Oh," she said with fake surprise, "I didn't see you there." The compound went silent. Ada didn't move. Her fists tightened. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. For a brief moment, it looked like she might finally react. But then, she turned and walked back inside. Inside her room, Ada shut the door quietly. Then she leaned against it and finally let the tears fall. But this time something was different. This wasn't just pain anymore. It was building, growing, becoming something else. Outside, Madame Bose smirked, proud of herself. Untouchable, unstoppable, unaware. That very soon, everything was about to change. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment if you're ready to see how karma finally catches up with Madame Bose, because in the next part, someone new is about to enter the compound, and they won't be easy to bully. Ada didn't come out the rest of that day. The compound felt unusually quiet but not peaceful, tense. Everyone had seen what happened. Everyone knew Madame Bose had gone too far. But still no one spoke. Inside her room, Ada sat on the floor beside her mother, staring blankly at the wall. Her clothes were still damp. Her body felt cold. But it wasn't the water that shook her. It was the realization that no matter how quiet, how respectful, how patient she was, Madame Bose would never stop. Not until she broke her completely. Later that evening, 2 women in the compound stood near the staircase, whispering. "This is too much," one said. "That woman will not rest until something bad happens," the other replied. "Why don't we report her? To who, and risk our own peace?" They both fell silent. Because they knew the truth. Madame Bose had a way of turning things around. She lied easily, manipulated boldly, and somehow always came out as the victim. So people chose survival over justice. And Ada, she was left alone in it. The following morning, Madame Bose woke up with the same mission. Control. She stepped outside and scanned the compound like a hawk. Then she noticed something. Ada's door was still closed. A slow smile spread across her face. "Good," she muttered, "she's learning." But that wasn't enough. Madame Bose didn't just want silence. She wanted fear. She wanted submission. So she walked over to Ada's door and banged loudly. "Open THIS door." Inside, Ada flinched. Her mother stirred weakly. Ada hesitated, then slowly opened the door. Madame Bose stood there, hands on her waist. "You think you can hide," she snapped. "You have not swept your front this morning. Are you now too big to clean?" Ada lowered her head. "I will do it now, Marthe." Now Madame Bose scoffed, "Lazy girl, useless." She turned and walked away, making sure everyone heard her. Ada stepped outside quietly, picked up her broom and began to sweep. But this time, people were watching her differently. Not just with pity, but with something else. Something close to discomfort. Because deep down they knew. If it could happen to Ada this badly, it could happen to any of them. That afternoon, a moving vehicle pulled up in front of the compound. Heads turned immediately. New tenants were rare. And in a place like this, newcomers mattered. A woman stepped out. Calm, composed, confident. She looked around the compound carefully, taking everything in. Her name was Kioma. And from the moment she arrived, something felt different. Kioma greeted a few people politely as her belongings were carried inside. She smiled, but her eyes were observant. Nothing escaped her. Not the tension, not the silence, not the way people avoided one particular direction. Madame Bose's sighed. Then it happened. As if on cue, Madame Bose appeared. She walked toward Kioma slowly, sizing her up. "New tenant?" she asked sharply. Kioma turned and faced her calmly. "Yes," she replied. Madame Bose folded her arms. Just know this compound has rules. If you don't follow them, you will have problems." The air tightened. Everyone nearby paused, waiting for Kioma's reaction. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she gave a small, polite smile. "I respect rules," she said, "but I don't tolerate nonsense." Silence. Heavy silence. For the first time in a long while. Madame Bose didn't have an immediate response. She narrowed her eyes slightly, then turned and walked away. But something had shifted. From the corner of the compound, Ada watched everything. She held her empty bucket, forgotten. Her eyes followed Kioma. There was something about her. Something strong. Something different. But Ada quickly shook the thought away. She had seen people try before. And she had seen how Madame Bose dealt with them. Still, a small part of her felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. That evening it began. Madame Bose couldn't stand uncertainty. She needed to establish control quickly. So she waited. And just like she expected, Kioma stepped out to fetch water. Perfect. Madame Bose walked toward the tap immediately. "You can't fetch water at this time," she said firmly. Kioma looked at her. "Why?" "Because I said so." Kioma blinked slowly. Then she continued filling her bucket. Madame Bose stepped closer. "Are you deaf?" Kioma stopped, then turned fully to face her. "Is there a written schedule?" she asked calmly. Madame Bose's expression hardened. "No." "Then I'll finish what I started." And just like that, she continued fetching water. Right in front of her. The compound held its breath. This was new. Madame Bose wasn't used to resistance. Especially not calm resistance. "Let me warn you," she said, her voice rising. "People who don't listen to me don't last here." Kioma lifted her bucket and stepped aside. "I'm not people," she replied quietly, "and I'm not afraid of you." Gasps. Whispers. Shock. Madame Bose stood frozen for a second. Then she laughed loud and sharp. "We will see." That night, Ada couldn't sleep. She replayed the scene over and over in her mind. The confidence, the calmness, the fearlessness. It didn't make sense to her. How could someone stand up to Madame Bose like that? Didn't she know what she was capable of? Or maybe she simply didn't care. Ada turned to look at her mother, who was finally asleep. Then she whispered softly, "I wish I was like her." Across the compound, Madame Bose sat in her room restless. Angry. Frustrated. Embarrassed. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not in public. Not without consequences. Her mind raced. "This one thinks she's strong," she muttered. "I will show her." A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. She had done it before. She would do it again. Break them. One by one. The next morning, something unusual happened. Kioma's slippers were missing. Her bucket gone. And right in front of her door, a pile of dirty water. Intentional. Calculated. A message. Kioma stared at it for a long moment. Then she looked up, directly at Madame Bose's window, and smiled. Not in fear, not in anger, but in a way that said, "Game on." Kioma didn't shout. She didn't complain. She didn't even ask questions. Instead, she bent down calmly, stepped over the dirty water and walked back inside her room. From her window, Madame Bose watched closely. Waiting. Expecting anger. Expecting confrontation. But none came. And somehow, that was more unsettling. An hour later, Kioma stepped out again. This time she held her phone. She walked straight to the tap and began fetching water like nothing had happened. Madame Bose came out immediately. "You didn't learn your lesson," she snapped. Kioma didn't respond. Instead, she placed her phone against the wall, camera facing outward. Recording. Madame Bose paused. "What is that?" she asked sharply. Kioma looked at her. Evidence. Silence. The word hit differently. For the first time, Madame Bose hesitated. "You think you're smart," she said, but her voice wasn't as strong as before. Kioma continued filling her bucket. "If anything happens to me or my property again," she said calmly, "this goes to the landlord and beyond." The compound stirred. People stepped out of their rooms, pretending not to watch, but listening to every word. Madame Bose forced a laugh. "Go ahead, nobody will believe you." Kioma picked up her bucket. "We'll see." That single moment did something powerful. It cracked the illusion. For years, Madame Bose had operated on one thing: fear without proof. But now, there was proof. And people noticed. That evening, whispers spread faster than ever. She recorded her. "Did you see Madame Bose's face? Maybe this one is different." For the first time, hope didn't feel impossible. Ada stood outside her room, watching Kioma quietly. Her heart beat faster. She wanted to say something. Anything. But fear still held her back. Kioma noticed her. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, Ada looked away, but Kioma smiled gently. Not pity. Not pressure. Just understanding. That simple gesture did more than words ever could. And slowly, Ada walked toward her. "Good evening," she said softly. Kioma nodded. "Good evening." There was a pause. Then Ada whispered, "Be careful, she doesn't like people standing up to her." Kioma tilted her head slightly. "And you," she asked, "do you like it?" Ada froze. The question caught her off guard. She didn't answer. But her silence said everything. That night, Madame Bose couldn't sleep. The word evidence echoed in her mind. It irritated her, threatened her, angered her. So she decided to escalate. If fear wasn't enough before, she would make it stronger. The next morning, chaos broke out. A loud shout filled the compound. "My money is missing." It was Madame Bose. She stood in the middle of the compound, furious. "Someone entered my room and stole my money," she yelled. Doors opened instantly. People rushed out. "What happened? Who did it?" Madame Bose turned slowly and pointed straight at Kioma. "It's her," Madame Bose declared. "Since she came, there has been no peace." Gasps filled the air. Kioma stepped forward calmly. "That's a serious accusation," she said. "You think I'm joking?" Madame Bose snapped. "You came here forming strong woman, now you're stealing." Kioma didn't react emotionally. Instead, she asked one simple question. "Do you have proof?" Madame Bose scoffed. "I don't need proof, I know what I'm saying." The tension grew thicker. Everyone waited. Watched. This was how it always started. Accusation. Pressure. Fear. Then collapse. But this time, it didn't go as planned. Kioma stepped forward slightly. Then let's do this properly, she said. Madame Bose frowned. What do you mean? Kioma raised her phone. We involve the landlord, and if necessary, the police. Silence. Complete silence. The word police hit harder than anything else. For the first time, Madame Bose's confidence cracked. You want to take it that far? She asked, her voice slightly lower. Kioma didn't blink. You started it. Something unexpected happened next. A voice spoke up. Maybe we should hear both sides, one tenant said carefully. Another added, yes, it's not good to accuse without proof. Madame Bose turned sharply. You people have suddenly found your voice. No one responded. But their silence was different this time. It wasn't fear anymore. It was distance. They were no longer fully on her side. And she could feel it. Then, the moment no one expected. Ada stepped forward. Her hands trembled. Her voice shook. But she spoke. She didn't take your money, Ada said quietly. Every head turned. Madame Bose's eyes widened. What did you say? She snapped. Ada swallowed hard. I said she didn't take it. Her heart pounded like it would burst out of her chest. This was dangerous. Very dangerous. But she couldn't stay silent anymore. Not after everything. Madame Bose laughed, but it sounded forced. So now you've joined her, she said mockingly. Ada didn't respond. Kioma glanced at her, just for a second. And in that look, there was respect. Madame Bose looked around the compound. At the faces, at the silence, at the shifting energy. And for the first time in years, she wasn't in control. Then suddenly, a young boy ran into the compound, out of breath. Madam, madam, he called. Madame Bose turned. What is it? The boy hesitated, then spoke. I saw your money. Silence dropped like a heavy weight. Where? Madame Bose demanded. The boy pointed. Inside your own room, under your pillow. The entire compound froze. All eyes shifted to Madame Bose. Her face changed. Shock, confusion. Then something else. Fear, real fear. Because in that moment, everything began to crumble. The compound stood still. No one moved. No one spoke. All eyes were fixed on Madame Bose. Her money inside her own room. Under her pillows. The same money she had just accused someone else of stealing. Madame Bose forced a laugh, but it came out strained. That boy is lying, she said quickly. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But the doubt had already spread. Like wildfire. Kioma stepped forward slowly. Then let's confirm it, she said calmly. Madame Bose's expression hardened. No one is entering my room. That reaction said everything. Murmurs grew louder. Why not check? If she's innocent, she shouldn't be afraid. This is getting out of hand. For the first time, the crowd wasn't silent. They were questioning her. Madame Bose turned in circles, trying to regain control. You people have lost your minds, she snapped. You want to invade my privacy because of a stupid accusation. Kioma didn't raise her voice. You made the accusation, she replied. Now let's clear it. The calmness in her tone only made things worse for Madame Bose. Because there was no fear in it. Only certainty. After a long, tense moment, Madame Bose marched toward her room. If it will shut all of you up, fine, she said angrily. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Everyone waited outside. The air was thick, heavy, Uncomfortable. Then, check under the pillow, the boy said again quietly. Madame Bose hesitated. For a split second, her confidence disappeared. But she quickly bent down, lifted the pillow, and froze. The money was there. Exactly where the boy said it would be. Madame Bose stared at it. Her mind raced. How? Why? But deep down, she knew. She had hidden it herself. In anger, in haste, in manipulation. Planning to use it as another weapon. But this time, it backfired. Completely. Slowly, Madame Bose picked up the money. Her hands trembled slightly. Then she walked back outside. All eyes followed her. Waiting. Watching. Judging. She didn't speak immediately. And that silence was louder than any shout she had ever made. Kioma broke the silence. Did you find it? She asked. Madame Bose opened her mouth, but no words came out. The crowd already knew. They could see it in her face. The same woman who had shouted, accused, and humiliated others now stood exposed. Completely. One of the tenants shook his head. So this is what you've been doing. Another added, you accuse people just to control them. Murmurs turned into voices. Voices turned into confrontation. Years of silence. Finally breaking. Madame Bose looked around, overwhelmed. No, you're misunderstanding. But no one was listening anymore. Because now, they had seen the truth for themselves. Ada stepped forward again. This time her voice didn't shake. You've done this before, she said. Madame Bose turned to her sharply. What are you saying? Ada didn't back down. You took my things, you embarrassed me, you made me suffer for no reason. The words came out stronger now. Clearer. Freer. And I kept quiet because I was afraid, she continued, but not anymore. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was respect. Just then, another voice came from the entrance. What is going on here? Everyone turned. It was the landlord. He had been called. And he didn't look pleased. Kioma stepped forward calmly. Sir, there's been a pattern of false accusations and harassment in this compound, she said. Madame Bose tried to interrupt. She's lying. But the landlord raised his hand. Enough. He looked around at the tenants. Is this true? For a brief moment no one spoke. Then, yes, one person said. Then another. Then another. Voices rose. Stories poured out. Everything Madame Bose had done. Finally exposed. Madame Bose's composure shattered. You people are ganging up against me, she shouted. But it was too late. The power she had held for so long was gone, replaced by truth. And the landlord sighed heavily. I've received complaints before, he said. I ignored them because there was no proof. He paused. But now I've seen enough. Madame Bose's face went pale. You have 1 month to vacate this compound. The words landed like thunder. No, you can't do that, she cried. But the decision was final. Firm. Unshakable. For the first time. She had no control. Days passed. The compound changed. Lighter. Calmer. Freer. People spoke more. Laughed more. Breathed easier. Ada fetched water without fear. No shouting. No intimidation. No humiliation. And Kioma. She simply lived her life. Quietly. Confidently. Like nothing ever needed to be proven. On the day she left, Madame Bose carried her bags out slowly. No one stopped her. No one insulted her. No one celebrated openly. But the silence she once used to control others now surrounded her. Alone, empty, defeated. As she stepped out of the compound, she glanced back once. But no one met her eyes. Because her chapter there was over. That evening, Ada sat outside her room with her mother. A small smile rested on her face. Peace. Real peace. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. She looked across the compound and saw Kioma. Their eyes met. And this time, Ada didn't look away. Final moral. Sometimes evil feels powerful. Sometimes silence feels safer. But in the end, truth doesn't stay hidden. And karma always finds its way back. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever experienced a neighbor like Madame Bose? And if you want more powerful, emotional stories like this, stay tuned. Because the next one, it might shock you even more.